The real daughter showed up sobbing like she lost everything. She said her only family was dirt poor. Her dad worked in coal mining. Mom was a homemaker. There was even a brother she was bullied into supporting. I investigated and was honestly puzzled. My real dad? Definitely not a coal miner. Mom? Hardcore finance investor. My brother? He'd give me a couple $100,000 just for spending money. The actual daughter, Becky, knocked on our door. She accused me of stealing her life, bawling like a baby. In front of my parents, she poured out her tragic life story between sobs and sniffles. My adoptive parents were so poor. Dad was a coal miner, Mom stayed home. I was never fed or clothed properly. They want me to pay for my brother's wedding. With every word, her cries got louder, practically breaking my eardrums. Lucy, please just give back my spot in the family. I can't live like this anymore. Becky clung to my arm, begging. Mom, well, my adoptive mom, looked pained, hugging her tightly and reassuring, sweetie, you won't suffer anymore. I'll make sure of it. My foster dad was less emotional, but he looked at Becky with sympathy. Taking a deep breath, he turned to me, wearing that stern look, and coldly said, Lucy, since our real daughter is back, go find your birth parents. We've already given a lot to raise you, so let's call it even. Don't bother us ever again. The way he monetized years of love hit me like a business deal. Yet, I felt no big emotions about it. Maybe this explains why, despite being their only child here, I never felt warmth from my supposed parents. And you know what? There were rumors they wanted me to marry a 50-year-old dude for some deal. Pretty convenient timing. This gives me an escape from a forced marriage. So Becky and I swapped places. I'm Lucy. She's Becky. Each of us headed back to our original families, living our real lives. But then things felt fishy when I got back home. Not 2 days in, and my parents were moving us into a full-on city mansion. And their aura? Way too sophisticated to align with Becky's story of a coal miner and housewife. It was my first day back, so I couldn't exactly grill them. Thanks to my time with the booths, I could read the room pretty well. After scouting quietly for a few days, I came to a pretty wild revelation. My real parents. They were nothing like the struggling folks Becky described. That brother who supposedly needed financial support was the definition of success. I figured, why not dig into this? Some old connections and a little sneakiness, and whoa, total shocker. Turns out Dad really was into coal, but not as a miner. He was the boss of the whole operation, a coal baron if you will. Yeah, the mountain Becky grew up on. Daddy owned all the mines there. And Mom? Oh man, a finance mogul herself, like top-tier investor. I used to follow her every move just to score those double profits. Now she's my actual mom. Sweet, talk about never worrying about investments again. And my brother? Seeing his details left me unbothered. This guy, entrepreneurial genius, who built a business empire in under 3 years. Real family of legends over here. Me, just a small fish in a big pond. With all this intel, the only question left was if I should spill the beans. No clue why they hid the truth from Becky, but now that I was back in the mansion, they didn't seem to be hiding so hard. As I racked my brain over this, my parents made the first move. One day they gathered in the living room, looking all intense. Lucy, something important to discuss with you. Mom seemed nervous, sneaking a look at Dad. I blinked and pieced it together. I knew what was coming. Sure enough, Mom drew a deep breath, words gushing out. Sweetheart, honestly, your dad and I, we're rich. Really rich. She clutched Dad's hand tight. He jumped in, yes, darling. Even richer than John. I amusedly watched Dad's hand turning red under Mom's grip. John. I mumbled the name, trying to place it. Hey sis, John's the current wealthiest dude. Just made Forbes the other day. My brother quietly reminded me. The richest guy. Oh right. John's the dude who recently hit top billionaire status and stayed trending on Weibo for a whole day and night. Wait a sec. I widened my eyes in shock, looking at my parents. We're richer than the richest guy. I mean, sure, I knew my folks and brother were not your average people, but I didn't expect them to be this extraordinary. Dad puffed up his chest, looking all proud, of course, that John thinks he can compete with me? Mom smacked him playfully, then chuckled and explained to me, don't mind your dad. He's been competitive with John since they were young. It's childish at their age. I raised an eyebrow at Dad. feeling a mix of surprise and a bit of smugness. Bet Becky never imagined her family, the one she looked down on the most, is the very family she dreams of leeching off. I couldn't help but smile, then looked puzzled. But why did you guys hide this from Becky? My parents looked at each other and sighed in exasperation. Mom explained, actually, after we had Becky, this fortune teller we met told us that as long as she's unmarried, showing her wealth would bring bad luck. I was flabbergasted, my expression got all weird. Lucy, I know it sounds bizarre, but we found it to be true. Dad saw my skepticism and explained, at first we didn't believe it, but everything started going wrong after we brought Becky home. Business troubles were minor. She was frequently sick. Both her mom and I had surgeries. It was surreal and scary. Dad sighed, and Mom patted her chest, still shaken by the memory. My whole scientific worldview took a hit hearing this. But seeing my parents, they weren't pulling a fast one. After all, what other reason would they have to hide their wealth from their own daughter? My brother lightly tapped my shoulder. Sis, before I was born, I didn't know about this. But from what I remember, whenever Mom and Dad softened up and bought something nice for Becky, something would happen. His expression was strange, not much sympathy there. What happens depends on how expensive the thing is, Jason continued with a weird tone. Becky's vein. I stared into his eyes, hoping to catch something. But Jason looked straight back, nothing to indicate he wasn't being sincere. The living room went awkwardly quiet. As I absorbed it all, my parents anxiously watched me. I looked up to meet their gaze, and shrugged with a smile. Good to know. I exhaled lightly, then casually admitted, actually, I already knew about your true identities. Now they looked genuinely surprised. I grinned at them knowingly. Suddenly, Mom laughed, breaking the tense atmosphere. Everything felt less serious, more relaxed. I leaned into the couch, but soon sat up with a jolt. Wait a minute. If I'm not supposed to know about the money, is it okay you're telling me this now? Thinking of Dad's warning about bad luck unfolding, I almost wanted to pretend I heard nothing. Yet my parents were completely unfazed. Mom waved it off, smiling warmly at me. To tell you the truth, Lucy, you've actually got a fiance. What? A fiance? I looked at Mom, confused, and she blinked at me innocently. I was speechless. Jason, seeing I needed a moment, leaned in and whispered, it's with Felix, John's only son. I shot him a surprised look, blurting, but doesn't Dad dislike the richest guy? Father and son are different people. Dad inserted stubbornly. Mom chuckled at Dad and clarified for me. Your dad and John were childhood buddies, just like your Aunt G and I, so we decided you'd be engaged even before you were born, just waiting for you guys to be of legal marriage age. I gaped at them in disbelief. But don't worry, we're not forcing anything. Ultimately, it's up to you too, Mom reassured, noticing my shock. We're saying you're old enough to meet up now. Whether you hit it off, who can say? I was getting a bit fuzzy hearing all this. I had to ask, Felix and Becky haven't met all this time? Mom fiddled with her hair, awkwardly admitting, Felix went abroad real young. So no, they haven't. She sighed, unsure if regretful or disappointed. We were gonna tell Becky this soon, but turns out she doesn't really want anything to do with us anymore. Jason scoffed loudly, his disdain for Becky clear. Even if she didn't run, Felix wouldn't give her a second glance. Jason frowned and said to me, even though Mom and Dad hid how rich her family was all these years, they didn't make life tough for her. Except for not having a butler, a maid and branded clothes, they didn't skimp on her grooming as a princess. But she doesn't care about all they taught her. Just because she couldn't flaunt luxury around her friends, she's been rolling her eyes at us for years. My dad also frowned, but my mom still showed some sympathy. Let it be. Can you blame her? Who doesn't want a good life? If we weren't forced, I wouldn't want to raise her like we were poor either. I patted my mom on the back, and she gave me a weak smile. Humph, she's just ungrateful, Jason said, pursing his lips. It wasn't just her living a frugal life. The whole family went through it with her. Jason was clearly upset. All right, Jason, what's done is done, my mom sighed, stopping him from complaining more. Jason shut his mouth, but he still looked annoyed. He pulled out his phone and started tapping away silently. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. I looked at it instinctively to find a notification. Jason had just transferred $200,000 to me. I was speechless. Jason glanced at me with a mischievous smile and said, "We've got the same family background, but I earned every penny of my money. If Becky can't do that, it's not our parents' fault. She has high expectations but low skills." I glanced down at my phone balance. Without hesitation, I nodded in agreement. My brother is right. Jason beamed with satisfaction. My mom watched us with an amused and exasperated expression. She interrupted our little capitalistic exchange and turned to me. "Anyway, that's the situation, Lucy. If you're willing, I can arrange for you to meet Felix." I gently shook my head, wiping the teasing expression off my face. "Mom, this is sudden. Can I have some time to think about it?" My mom agreed quickly. "Sure, it's not urgent. Take your time." She dropped the topic and turned to the auntie about dinner plans. My dad also headed to his study, leaving just me and Jason in the living room. All I could think about was how generous he was to send $200,000 my way so casually. Not even my adoptive parents at the booths ever did such a thing. Jason seemed busy with his phone, probably work-related. I had nothing to do, so I pulled up my stock trading app. "Hey sis," Jason suddenly said beside me, his tone a bit teasing. "If you don't have any goals right now, meeting Felix might be a good idea." I didn't expect him to say that and blurted out, "Huh?" Jason looked serious. "I haven't been in the business world long, but I admire Felix. His family is the richest, thanks to him. So, even if romance isn't on the table, it wouldn't hurt to know him." Caught by Jason's meaningful gaze, I nodded thoughtfully. "All right, I'll let Mom know when I'm ready." Jason grinned and sent another $200,000 my way, telling me to enjoy spending it. What a great brother. I'm happily taking on the role of brother supporter. These days back home have been a dream come true. Since my parents revealed my true identity, life's been luxurious. 2 weeks after returning, my parents and brother finally had time. They took me to the mall for some compensatory shopping for all the hardships. I glanced at the bag in my hand, each worth tens of thousands. Even though I refused multiple times, they dragged me through high-end boutiques, ordering over 100 custom-made outfits. They swapped out my jewelry for designer pieces, subtly luxurious but shockingly expensive. Even the new season's purse I came with was deemed too ordinary and cheap by Mom, who insisted on choosing a new one. I was almost numb from all the wealth. The money spent on me today could cover years of my past life with my adoptive family. Luckily, we were done with everything except the bags. Didn't expect to run into Becky there. Becky was with my adoptive mom, caught in a color dilemma over 2 bags. As we entered, Becky and I locked eyes. She looked startled, then sneered when she saw my family. Others noticed her too. Jason immediately muttered, "Bad luck." Mom's expression fell, and she whispered to me, "Lucy, should we go somewhere else?" I took her hand without answering, watching Becky's disdain. I chuckled softly. "Don't worry, Mom. We're not leaving, and if they cause trouble, they'll be the ones embarrassed." My dad snorted from beside me, already stepping forward. "We're not running. She's the one with no conscience." Jason seemed to agree and stepped up too. Mom saw the 3 of us standing firm and sighed in resignation, following us inside. An assistant approached to help us pick out products. My mom dragged me off to pick out a bag, and for a minute there, I totally forgot about Becky and her crew. The 3 of us were torn between 3 different bags. Before we could make up our minds, Becky just couldn't hold back and walked over to us. "Oh, I was wondering where you got the guts to walk into a store like this. Are you planning to scrape together everything you've got just to buy the cheapest bag?" Becky looked at us with her nose almost up in the air, full of snarky disdain. I was a bit confused, glanced at the bags we were holding, and gave her a puzzled look. "Becky, are you misunderstanding something here?" "Misunderstanding?" She let out a sarcastic laugh. "Please, like I don't know your situation." Her eyes swept over our bags with a dismissive glance, her tacky nails tapping on her bright red lips in a fake gesture. "Sure, these are new models, but aren't they the cheapest ones in the store? Come on, if you can't afford it, don't pretend to be something you're not. You can barely afford food. What's the point of buying a bag?" She gave me a cold look, and then her gaze landed on my mom. "Candy, you're a stay-at-home mom with no income. Shouldn't you think about David and Jason who are mining? One of these bags costs more than they make in a year, right? My dad and brother's faces changed instantly. Jason looked like he was about to lash out. Just then my foster mom came over. She cozied up to Becky's arm and gave us a fake smile. So you're Becky's foster parents, right? I'm her birth mom, Wendy. Thanks for taking care of Becky all these years. Even though she was saying thanks, her attitude was downright uncomfortable. My mom pursed her lips, staying silent. Her usual peacemaker demeanor totally vanished. Wendy seemed either oblivious to or unfazed by the atmosphere in our family. Once she realized we weren't going to respond, she smugly said, "But given your circumstances, Becky's had it tough with you. Sigh, let's not fuss. If you're here to buy a bag, let me get you one. Pick whichever you like, I'll settle the bill. Consider it a token of gratitude for raising Becky." Her superior attitude was even more infuriating than Becky's. I was so irritated I burst out laughing, ready to roll up my sleeves and start a row. But just as I was about to say something, my mom stopped me. I looked at her instinctively and saw Candy, my eternally gentle mom, with a cold expression staring at the two of them. It was the first time I'd ever seen my mom look like that. Beside me, my brother and dad's expressions had already shifted. Before I could make sense of it all, Jason had yanked me into a safer spot. My mom tapped the table lightly with her fingers, which made Jason visibly shiver. I was baffled for a second until I heard my mom let out a cold laugh and say, word by word, "Just one bag? And you have the nerve to even offer?" Wendy and Becky both wore disdainful, hostile expressions. My mom didn't budge as she glared at them, then scoffed. "First of all, Becky, you're no longer part of our family, so what we do with our money has absolutely nothing to do with you." She gave Becky's outfit a once-over and smirked. "As for you, what's with the outfit today? Trying to look rich on a budget, wearing the full nouveau riche get-up. Your real mom dares to take you out like this?" She covered her eyes disdainfully, and before Becky could counter, she added, "Oh, maybe your real mom thinks a little tough love will help your fashion sense grow by leaps and bounds." She finished, mockingly shaking her head. Becky beat red, pointed at her and took deep breaths. But my mom had already lost interest in her. She moved her gaze to Wendy like she was nothing more than a pile of trash. Wendy's face twisted, seemingly itching to avenge Becky's humiliation. My mom looked at her and suddenly chuckled. Crossing her arms, she studied them both with amusement, and then exclaimed as if having a revelation, "Oh well, no surprise." She eyed Wendy and mockingly shook her head. "Turns out your fashion sense isn't much better. Seeing Becky, I thought you were deliberately training her." "My bad on that, sorry." Wendy's face contorted as she glared bitterly at Candy. "What's that supposed to mean? You can't afford luxury goods, so you're jealous of us flaunting our brands?" Candy snorted, dropping her bag nonchalantly on the table, and turning to the clerk. "I'll take this one." Becky sneered, taunting, "Oh, so you're going for the cheapest anyway." My mom shot her a calm glance. "Becky, is this really how I raised you to speak to your elders?" Unfazed, Becky retorted, "I haven't even called you out for child trafficking, and you're nitpicking my manners?" "Becky, mind what you say," Jason barked, unable to hold back. But my mom stayed unmoved, looking at her with a mix of disappointment and detachment. "It was the hospital's mistake back then. But if you're claiming I trafficked you, expect a defamation lawsuit tomorrow." And she paused, looking steadily at Becky. "I didn't finish before you interrupted." She turned to the sales clerk and calmly said, "Besides the one in my hand, wrap up all the rest too." At that the air froze. Becky and Wendy were staring at Candy like she was nuts, mouths wide open. I stood behind my mom, arms crossed, watching her deliver her speech, and I couldn't help but be impressed. No wonder Jason backed off so quickly when her expression changed. My mom, usually so gentle and composed, had some serious fighting spirit when switched on. After recovering from the shock, Becky and Wendy suddenly burst into laughter. Becky was laughing so hard she almost cried, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She mocked my mom, "Candy, even if you're being competitive, you can't make wild claims like that. Do you know how much it costs to buy all the bags here? Even selling you wouldn't cover it." Wendy was a bit more reserved than Becky, but clearly equally disdainful. I sighed and shook my head, feeling oddly sympathetic towards their ignorance. My mom remained unfazed by their mockery. She just smiled graciously, gestured towards the clerk to start packing, and turned back to us. She always seemed so gentle and kind with us. I caught the sympathetic look in her eyes as she said, "Honey, did you live with people like that before? You must have had a tough time." I grinned, trying to lighten the mood. "It's okay. Now I'm back where I belong. Besides, they deserve each other." My mom chuckled at that. I smiled sweetly at her. A little later, the clerk brought out 2 neatly wrapped packages for Wendy and Becky. They didn't leave. Instead, they stood behind us, still mocking. "Hey, weren't you buying everything here? Where's all the stuff? Don't embarrass yourselves." My mom rolled her eyes behind them, muttering persistent annoying people. I laughed, patting my mom's hand before stepping up to them. "Come on, guys. Packing up all these bags takes time. Don't you know anything about shopping?" I glanced at their outfits and nodded. My mom wasn't wrong. Just then, the clerk approached us to discuss something, and I fully ignored Wendy and Becky as I listened. The clerk suggested they pack up the bags and have them delivered, since it would be too much to carry all at once. We agreed it was a good idea, given how many there were. My brother settled the bill, and we started discussing where to dine for dinner. Becky and Wendy, not wanting to let it go, started yelling just as we were about to leave. "Wait a minute. Where are your bags? After bragging so much, now you're leaving?" I turned and shot Becky a peculiar look, half annoyed she didn't get it yet. I told the clerk, "Pick the cheapest 2 bags from our purchase and give them to those ladies as a thank you for bringing me home." The clerk looked confused, but kept his professionalism and didn't question it. As we walked away, I could hear Becky's shrill voice behind us, "Give me? Hope she's not trying to scam me or something." Finally free from their unpleasant company, Jason let loose his frustration. "You really let them off too easily. Just like that." My mom gave him a look and said, "Don't you understand buy low, sell high? Can't believe you're my son." My dad shook his head, gazing at Jason with affection. "Lucky your company's doing well. You're lucky no one's outsmarted you yet." "Jason." I tried not to laugh as I patted his shoulder. His cheeks were flushed with anger, and he let out a frustrated humph. "All right," I comforted him. "I know you can't stand others insulting your family. You must be sharp and smart at work." Jason was touched and, without hesitation, transferred a couple $100,000 to me. I was speechless. Best brother ever. Soon enough, our little encounter became a memory. My parents never made a big deal out of it, but I understood. My mom's encounter with Becky and Wendy was just a small introduction. They probably thought we were just bluffing for appearances. But that's the point. Like Mom said, let them enjoy their high spirits. When the truth hits, their fall will be much harder. After dinner, my dad called me to his study. It was the first time we had a private conversation since I'd returned. He wanted to talk about my future plans. Honestly, I wasn't entirely sure about my career path. My dad hoped I'd help my brother with his company, but I had no experience with corporate management. After some thought, I decided to start learning about investments from my mom and slowly transition into the family business. My dad nodded in agreement, assuring me they'd come up with a training plan soon. I smiled sweetly, hugged him, and left the study. In the following days, I spent set hours with my mom learning the basics of finance. Meanwhile, clothes, bags, and jewelry we purchased kept arriving, filling up my closet. I marveled at how wonderful it was to be financially secure. Life cruised along smoothly, until my adoptive mother's call came abruptly out of the blue. Returning to my room after another lesson with Mom, I saw her call. Her voice was as haughty as ever. Curiosity about her next move made me take the call. Without wasting time, I asked, "What do you want?" "Lucy, the former CEO of Nolan heard about your background and still wants to marry you. Get ready. You're going to get the marriage certificate with the CEO of Nolan in a couple of days." Wendy didn't mince words, but what she said wasn't pleasant. The CEO of Nolan? Wasn't that the old guy, about 50, they tried to set me up with before? I raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised, and said, "Aren't you looking for the wrong person? Your daughter now is Becky." My foster mom snickered on the other end. She hadn't yet spoken when Becky suddenly grabbed the phone. "Lucy, you should be grateful to marry the CEO of Nolan. We're talking about his wealth here. Something you could never achieve in a lifetime." I laughed coldly and bluntly retorted, "If the CEO of Nolan is so great, why don't you marry him?" "Me? Of course I've got to marry," Becky replied smugly, "but I'm marrying the wealthiest man's son, so I'll leave someone like the CEO of Nolan to you." I rolled my eyes, feeling utterly speechless, but a keyword caught my attention. The wealthiest man's son. Felix. Thinking back to when my mom asked me yesterday if I'd made up my mind about meeting Felix, I felt a little funny about it. Has Becky gone nuts thinking she caught a big fish? All right, Becky, let me talk to her. Wendy gently took the phone back from Becky, and her pretentious tone made me sick. Lucy, regardless of whether you want to or not, you don't have the choice to refuse this marriage. But rest assured, we won't let you suffer any losses. If you marry the CEO of Nolan, we'll allow you to do so as an honorably adopted daughter of the Booths. Not only will you have a life of comfort, your family will also benefit. We've done right by you, haven't we? Listening to Wendy's charitable tone made me speechless. Allowing me to marry as the Booths' adopted daughter. They just needed to cozy up to the Whites for projects. Acting like it was all for my benefit. And honestly, I don't care for the Booths at all. Too lazy to argue further, I coldly replied, "Let me get married? In your dreams. If there's a marriage, let your real daughter marry." Without waiting for a response, I hung up decisively. I blacklisted Wendy's number right away. The idea of marrying a 50-year-old man still infuriates me. As I paced back and forth in the room, suddenly a name popped into my head. Felix. Yeah, if Becky wants to marry Felix, I can't let that happen. Especially since Jason hinted at something recently, that knowing Felix wouldn't hurt. Even if things don't work out romantically, having the wealthiest man's son as a friend would surely be beneficial for me in the future. With that in mind, I didn't hesitate any longer. Determined, I went straight to my mom's room to tell her I'd like to meet Felix. Her face lit up with delight when she heard. She immediately called Felix's mom, full of smiles, and arranged for us to meet. Scrolling through my phone, I realized there was no trace of Felix online. This surprised me a bit. After all, I thought the wealthiest man's son would be quite famous, especially if Felix is highly regarded. Surely, there'd at least be a picture of him. Couldn't be he was too ugly and deleted himself. Lucy, I've spoken to Auntie G, and they decided you'll attend Felix's birthday as his companion this weekend, Mom said, thrilled after hanging up the phone. Seeing her excitement, I held back my words of refusal. Fine, I'll go meet him. No matter what, as long as he looks human, he's better than an old man in his 50s, right? Keep that mindset. I waited calmly for the weekend. Meanwhile, Felix added me as a contact on contact information. We didn't chat much. Beyond the initial introductions, there was nothing else. Thankfully, I wasn't meeting him with a blind date kind of mindset anyway. On the way to his birthday party, I decided even if Felix looks like a caveman, I'm making this friend for sure. The party was at the largest 5-star hotel in town. My mom told me on the way that this is Felix's first public birthday celebration. A lot of people came because of this. Only now did I realize Felix is known for being low profile in the circle. Not only did I find no info on him online, but even people of my parents' generation haven't seen this mysterious son of the wealthiest man. Yet he actually led Yu Jia to a new height. Since he chose to publicly appear this time, many people couldn't wait to see him. This high-profile activity with a low-profile persona, he's truly a big deal. After asking my mom more about Felix, we soon arrived at the venue. Since I was to be Felix's date, our family arrived early to the lounge. Felix prepared 2 rooms for resting. Following my parents, we walked into Felix's room. His door was wide open. As I got closer, I heard a woman talking inside. My mom just walked in boldly greeting, "Carrie, we're here." The room went quiet. I obediently followed behind my mom, sneaking a peek at the people inside the room. 3 people gathered there, 2 men and 1 woman. One of the gentlemen already turned to greet my dad, which I guessed to be the wealthiest man himself. Labeling him in my mind, I moved my eyes to the remaining man. He must be the wealthy son, my fiance Felix. Due to the angle of my gaze, the first thing I noticed was Felix's long straight legs. Relaxed on a chair, legs crossed effortlessly, they didn't quite match my expectations. Curious, I looked up at him. In just one look, my breath nearly caught in my throat. Deep-set features, a refined face, and eyes that seemed to smile as if he had a secret. This face would make anyone instantly say, "What a handsome guy." I didn't expect the mysterious heir of the wealthiest family to be such a looker. It actually caught me off guard for a moment. Felix slowly got up from his chair, took a few steps forward, and came right over to us. First, he politely greeted my parents. Then he glanced down at me with a gentle smile. "Miss Smith's, long time no see." I was taken aback when I heard this. My mom, surprised, asked Lucy, "Do you know Felix?" I looked up at Felix, a bit puzzled. His expression was warm as he looked at me, and his handsome face started to match a vague memory I had in my mind. My eyes widened in surprise and I blurted out, "It's you?" I never expected the mysterious man, with whom I had this strange engagement, to have met me before. With a slight smile, Felix calmly explained to the elders, "We met at an auction before. I had no idea she was Mr. and Mrs. Smith's daughter." He looked back at me, naturally and kindly. "Miss Smith's, what a small world." Finally snapping out of it, I managed a slightly embarrassed smile. "Thanks again for giving me that painting back then." "It was nothing. No need to keep thanking me, Miss Smith's." I wasn't sure what else to say, so I just returned his smile. Then turning to my mom, I briefly explained, "A few years ago, I went to an auction. There was a painting up for bid that I really liked. The competition was tough, and Felix was the other bidder at the end, but he let me have it. I was quite grateful." My mom seemed to have an aha moment. John, though, was surprised. "Are you talking about that auction at the jewel auction house 3 years ago?" I nodded obediently at John. His expression turned a bit intriguing. "Ah, that explains it. Our company needed that painting for a project, so Felix went to bid on it. I was surprised when he told me he didn't win it. So it went to you." He looked at Felix knowingly, with a hint of teasing in his eyes. My surprise showed a bit as I raised an eyebrow at Felix. He gently interrupted our chat, still perfectly composed. "It's in the past, nothing worth mentioning. Besides, even without the painting, there were other options for the company, so I didn't see the need to snatch it from Miss Smith's." He chuckled and smoothly changed the subject. "Are Mr. and Mrs. Smiths attending the reception later?" For years, my folks had been skipping high-end events, pretending to be low-key, but now it seemed they were just used to that under-the-radar lifestyle. "No, we just came for Lucy to meet some people." My mom adjusted her outfit, smiled at me, and said, "Lucy, just stick with Felix at the event. Your father and I have some things to do, so we'll head off now." Since she'd already prepped me earlier, I wasn't surprised when she said they were leaving. I nodded, and my mom seemed pleased seeing me next to Felix before she hummed a tune, taking my dad off with her. Felix's parents also left to greet guests, setting a time for us to join them later. Soon, it was just me and Felix left in the room. A curious mix of awkwardness and something else slowly settled in. My cheeks felt a little warm, and I didn't know what to say to Felix, so I looked down. Felix, on the other hand, naturally started chatting with me. He asked about how I was adjusting to life recently. As I answered, I realized he was quite aware of everything that happened with my family. There was some time before the gala officially started. We were making small talk when I asked, "What made you decide to show up all of a sudden?" As soon as I asked, I realized it might have been a bit rude, but Felix didn't mind. He even teased me a bit. "What if I said it's because I want to get married?" I paused, heartbeat a bit quicker, and tried to joke, "Well, that's nice to hear." With such a big reveal, "Do you have someone in mind already?" For some reason, I recalled Becky mentioning she wanted to marry the billionaire's son, watching Felix with mixed feelings. Felix chuckled softly, genuinely amused. "Miss Smiths, if I recall correctly, we're actually engaged? Aren't you worried?" I awkwardly touched my nose. "Weren't we joking about that engagement? If you really like someone, I wouldn't hold you back." Felix shook his head with a smile. He didn't pursue the topic anymore. Instead, he glanced at his watch and said quietly, "Looks like it's about time." He straightened his suit, stood up, and offered his arm to me like a true gentleman. I looked at his handsome, refined face and heard his soft-spoken invitation. "Shall we? My date." I took Felix's arm, and walked into the event hall. This was Felix's public debut, and as soon as we entered, the crowd erupted with cheers. As his first public companion, I naturally caught a lot of attention too. Even though I'd mentally prepared for this, the actual scene still startled me. But Felix seemed to sense my nerves. While smoothly handling all the people trying to engage with him, he discreetly gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. With his calm pace and measured words, I began to relax. Once settled, I adjusted to being his partner, playing the role efficiently by his side. We made our way around the room, exchanging pleasantries, and after finally fending everyone off, I thought I could take a breather. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a familiar figure. Becky. I honestly didn't expect Felix to invite the Booths to his birthday party. Judging by his demeanor, he seemed to be aware of my history with the Booths. Since he invited me as his date, I figured I wouldn't see anyone from the Booths here. Yet, after double-checking, that clueless girl wandering around the hall was indeed Becky. I raised an eyebrow subtly. I always felt nothing good comes with her presence. Sure enough, just as I was about to suggest to Felix we move elsewhere, Becky spotted us. No point pretending I hadn't seen her by then. She strutted straight toward us. I couldn't help but sigh in resignation, my eyes drooping slightly, accepting my fate. Felix beside me raised an eyebrow slightly. With a quick glance at Becky, he leaned toward me, whispering, "Is she the one you swapped identities with?" I nodded, whispering back, "To be precise, she's someone who couldn't stand me." Felix chuckled, suddenly amused, not sure which word hit his funny bone. In the time we exchanged those couple of words, Becky had reached us. Her gaze was as contemptuous as ever, and her tone was filled with disdain. "Lucy, what are you doing here? You're about to get married, and you're still attending such parties?" So unrestrained. I rolled my eyes at her in disbelief. Beside me, Felix seemed puzzled, asking, "Married? Lucy, you're getting married? Lucy?" Felix's sudden name calling threw me off for a second. It took me a couple of seconds to realize he was referring to me. "Oh, that." I shrugged. Honestly, even I didn't know I was getting married. "Hey Lucy, don't be ungrateful. It's a steal for you to marry the Nolan CEO. Becky interjected impatiently, looking at me like I was broke. Her superior attitude was getting on my nerves. Just as I was about to tell her to buzz off, Felix chimed in. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, flashing a warm smile at Becky, but with a hint of coldness in his dark eyes. "Miss, is the Nolan CEO you're talking about from Sunrise Group?" He looked slightly conflicted. Glancing at me, he hesitated. "If I'm not mistaken, that Nolan CEO should be in his 50s, right?" "Yes, that's the one," Becky insisted firmly. Finally, she seemed to notice Felix beside me. Watching her, I caught the brief awe that flashed in her eyes when she looked at him. "So who are you? Lucy's hired escort?" Felix blinked at her words, momentarily stunned. I couldn't help but chuckle softly, patting Felix's shoulder with a bit of sympathy. His face showed a mix of expressions. Still being the impressive person he is, he regained composure quickly. I felt his body relax from its initial tension. When I looked at his face again, he'd returned to his usual calm demeanor. He lowered his gaze slightly, smiling politely at Becky. "First, I'm the actual host of this party, and I'm Felix." He introduced himself, and amid Becky's disbelief, he continued coolly. "Secondly, miss, I don't recall anyone from the Booths being on my guest list." With those final words, Felix's expression turned completely indifferent. Becky hesitated, her gaze darting between me and Felix. After a long pause, she suddenly gasped, "Are you really the wealthiest man's son? What are you doing with Lucy?" Her words amused me to no end. Without waiting for Felix, I retorted, "Becky, what's wrong with the richest man's son being with me? I'm his date. Who else should he be with, you?" Becky looked at me disdainfully, covering her mouth like I was short on cash. "You're wearing knockoff evening gowns, and yet you have the nerve to be the rich man's date? Must be using some shady means." I took a deep breath. Talking to someone like her felt like an insult to my intelligence. "Becky, my date isn't just anyone. Are you suggesting I resorted to some dirty tricks?" Felix interjected, his gaze icy as he stared at Becky. Becky turned pale under Felix's intense demeanor. She instinctively shrank back, stammering, "No, that's not what I meant." Felix remained calm, steadily watching her. "Oh? Then please, enlighten me on what you meant. Becky's face paled to the point even her makeup couldn't mask it. She stared blankly at Felix, then suddenly said, Lucy's family is super poor. She's not one of us. Felix, she must have sneaked in here. Don't let her fool you. I glanced dumbfounded at Becky, unsure what nonsense she was on about. Felix looked equally speechless, struggling to make sense of Becky's wild imagination. After explaining for so long, Becky ended up thinking the most logical reason was I tricked Felix. I found it hilariously absurd. I pulled my hand away from Felix's arm and crossed my arms, looking at her with a mix of amusement and disbelief. Hey Lucy, didn't you once say you wanted to marry the richest guy's son? Well, your fiance is right here. Why are you acting all scared? Felix rubbed his arm instinctively at that. He shot Becky a disapproving look, then turned to me frustrated. Lucy, let's not joke about this, it's kind of gross. With Felix being so direct, Becky's face shifted dramatically. I couldn't help but chuckle, waving a hand dismissively, then leaned casually on Felix. Your problem, Felix. If she can crash your birthday party like this, maybe the hotel's security needs an upgrade. What do you mean, Lucy? I had an invite. Becky was quick to react whenever I spoke. But now, she stepped on Felix's toes. Considering this, I gave her a mischievous grin. Felix clearly lost patience with Becky's antics. He gave her a cold stare, his formidable presence silencing her completely. Felix didn't waste time, called security, and Becky was escorted out, looking very miffed. Before leaving, Becky glared daggers at me, seething. Lucy, watch your back, this isn't over. Unfazed, I smiled back, turning away, leaving her behind. After Becky was removed, Felix looked at me apologetically. Sorry, I didn't invite her. Didn't expect her to slip in and hassle you. I waved it off, chuckling lightly. No worries. I'm the one who caused trouble for you. It's your birthday after all. She wouldn't be here if not for me. I almost said if she hadn't seen me, she wouldn't bother Felix. But then I recalled Becky's marrying the richest guy's son comment, and decided to zip it. Felix seemed to be on the same wavelength as me. His expression shifted between frustration and bemusement, until he finally sighed, covering his eyes. I heard his resigned but firm words. She's totally delusional. I couldn't hold back my laughter seeing Felix so troubled, deciding to change the topic, avoiding more Becky talk. But as the event ended and I got home, I saw Twitter trending like crazy. Besides heir to the wealthiest man first appearance, the fastest rising topic was fake heiress steals my identity and man. Feeling uneasy, I clicked on it. As expected, the top post was from Becky. Using her main account, she publicly accused me of stealing her fiancé and social climbing without shame, among other things. She had professional PR help, crafting an emotional narrative. If I weren't the one she's accusing, I'd think that fake heiress was really a piece of work. The story spread quickly, and by the time I got home, it had exploded online. I scrolled through endless comments while mulling over a counter strategy. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from inside. Startled, I was about to open the door when I heard Jason furiously exclaiming, Is Becky out of her mind? Mom, Dad, don't stop me. I'm going to teach her a lesson. Jason, stay calm. Be discreet and don't leave any trace, came my dad's gritted voice. My mom added with a cold sneer, Ha, a simple beating won't cut it. I refuse to believe the booths have been squeaky clean all these years. I'll dig around, and if they slip even a bit, they're going down. I quickly put my phone away, opened the door, and stepped in to stop them from doing anything rash. As soon as my mom saw me, she rushed over and hugged me. Tears in her eyes, she said, You've been wronged, her tender gaze softening my heart instantly. I gave her a soothing pat on the shoulder, and with my family still simmering with anger, I walked over, brushing it off. Come on, guys. Becky played a trick on me. We'll just have to hit back. Sis, how are you going to handle it? Jason, unusually serious, dropped his laid-back demeanor and showed a glimpse of a CEO's resolve. I rubbed my chin, still mulling over the best approach. Just then my phone rang again. I took it out, surprised to see it was Felix calling. As soon as I answered, Felix got straight to the point. Lucy, ask your parents if they're willing to go public with their identity now. I was taken aback, putting it on speaker. Felix's clear, methodical voice came through. Mr. and Mrs. Smiths, I understand you've enjoyed a low profile all these years, avoiding unnecessary drama. But with the online frenzy escalating fast, being passive might lead to cyberbullying against Lucy. My parents' faces darkened at the mention of cyberbullying. Felix continued, calmly analyzing. Becky's actions imply she thinks you won't retaliate. We've missed the best moment to quash the rumors, so a PR firm now is pointless. The best course is for you to reveal your identity, proving Lucy has no need for social climbing. Then we can show Lucy and I had an engagement all along, calming the uproar. Felix paused, then added coolly, once Lucy's safe from any fallout, it's time for the booths to pay the price. Defamation is minor. I want evidence of serious misconduct. Only dismantling the booths will ensure lasting peace. Leave that to me, Jason cut in, seriously taking Felix's lead. All right. Felix agreed promptly. My dad added, let's do as you suggest. We'll serve legal notices soon and make an official statement on Lucy's birthday. My mom joined the discussion with Felix. They quickly hammered out a plan, leaving me stunned. All right then, we're ready. Looks like I'm the only rookie around here. My parents got things going fast as soon as they talked to Felix. I picked up my phone and went back to my room, deciding to just be quiet and not cause any trouble. Once the door was shut, I let out a deep breath. Suddenly, a soft laugh came from my phone, and I nearly dropped it out of shock. I quickly picked it up and realized Felix hadn't hung up yet. Sorry, I didn't see you were still on, I said, a bit embarrassed, holding the phone to my ear. Felix chuckled lightly, no worries. After that, silence filled the air, with just the sound of static humming in the background. Then Felix sighed, so gently it was almost unbelievable. Did it scare you? He asked. I paused, my heartbeat skipping a couple of beats. Not really scared, I started slowly, choosing my words. I'd say it was more like frustrating. I sighed, rubbing my forehead in exasperation. I've never really dealt with something like this before. I mean, it didn't scare me, just caught me off guard. I paused briefly, then softly added, thank you. Felix gave a soft chuckle, his deep voice tinged with warmth and reassurance. No problem, happy to help. I said thanks again, more seriously this time. After all, it was only our second time meeting. Felix quickly came up with a plan to help me as soon as things went south. And I wouldn't forget that. We didn't stick around on that topic long. Felix switched to light-hearted chatter for a bit, before telling me to get some rest. I told him good night, and after hanging up, my panic was gone. If anything, deep down in my heart, there was a warm, wistful feeling. I slept soundly, and the next day offered to help Jason dig up some intel on the booths. I've been with the booths for over 20 years. I've got some resources saved, I told him. Jason was pleasantly surprised, and I looked at him with a smug grin. Once we were on the same page, I started tapping into old connections to see what I could find out about the booths. When I was with them before, my adoptive parents treated me like a security threat and never let me in on company stuff. But I still had the title of a booth's daughter, and plenty of people wanted to cozy up to me. In fact, since I wasn't on good terms with Wendy and them, I made sure to have a few backups ready. I never expected I'd use them for this instead of running from a wedding. Thinking about it now, it feels like I got the better end of the deal. My parents sent a lawyer's letter, and along with Felix's parents, they presented proof of our engagement, shutting down Becky's lies. The day before the birthday party, we wrapped up everything. My parents, for once, sent out invitations and threw a big bash, surprising lots of people who knew our family's situation. Thanks to some big shots from my parents' era, who accepted the invites without hesitation, even more curious folks showed up. On my end, Jason and I had gathered all the evidence against the booths. Over on their end, Felix promised to keep things steady, so they wouldn't have time to prepare or escape. Everything was going smoothly, and soon, the tiger lurking in the shadows would bare its fangs. I hadn't seen Felix much during this time, but he called every night for a chat. Relationships can be so mysterious sometimes. I'd only known Felix for a few days, yet hearing his voice had already become a part of my routine. That night, while I was laying in bed with a face mask, Felix called, but he had an unexpected question. Assuming nothing goes wrong, the Booths will be out of the picture soon. You've been their daughter for so long. Have you ever hesitated? Tightening my grip on the phone, I slowly let out a sigh. Saying I haven't thought about it would be a lie. But I paused, then firmly continued. They only raised me to be a pawn for marriage. I saw them as family, but they never saw me as their daughter. Over the years I've hoped, fought, and been let down. Reaching this point, I'm not going to be a doormat. With a hint of frustration, I added, if they hadn't messed with me first, I wouldn't have done anything to them. Felix laughed softly. It's good you see it this way, he said, easing up a bit. Then, he playfully changed the subject. But since that's the case, we really do have to go through with this marriage. Does that bother you? I froze, realizing I hadn't given it any thought. Or maybe, in the past few days, I'd already assumed I'd be marrying Felix, and it didn't bother me at all. This realization made my heart race, suddenly confronting something deep inside me that had remained hidden, but was now breaking through. Could it be that I've fallen for Felix? Lucy, you still there? His voice snapped me back to reality. I quickly reassured him I hadn't taken offense to his joke. I was quiet for a moment, trying to calm my racing heart, and asked softly, after all, this started because of me. I'm okay with it. But for you being randomly tied to me, doesn't it feel uncomfortable? Felix was quick to respond, not at all. He chuckled, but his tone relaxed. I didn't plan to say this over the phone, but since we're on the topic, I want to tell you directly. I heard him take a breath, like he was making a decision, and then he spoke his truth gently. Lucy, I've actually liked you for a long time. Back at the auction, I struggled a lot, but I couldn't bear to see you disappointed. I was a bit stunned, feeling like my brain and ears weren't on the same wavelength. I actually saw you at another party before. You helped a server who was being bullied. Your firmness and kindness caught my attention right away. His tone was still uniquely calm and steady. I listened quietly, feeling my cheeks getting warmer. But I always knew I had an engagement. My parents never forced me, but I felt wearing that burden while approaching you was disrespectful. He sighed softly, sounding a bit helpless. So later, I just moved abroad, trying to end this feeling for you by escaping. I couldn't help but hold my breath, subconsciously gripping my phone tighter. But Felix didn't dwell on this sad confession. After saying that, he laughed lightly, his tone suddenly more cheerful. But then I found out the one I was engaged to was you, and I couldn't wait anymore. Mrs. Smith's arranged our meeting, because I asked her to. I thought if you'd agree, I was confident I could make you like me too. I remembered how my mom pushed me to meet him back then. I thought it was just her being a busybody. Turns out Felix was the one pushing her from behind. I couldn't help but laugh at that, suddenly feeling like Felix was very close to me. He laughed along with me, then continued, I didn't expect things to happen like this. I was planning to pursue you slowly, then date, get engaged, and married one step at a time. I also felt a bit nostalgic listening to him. Who would have thought I started just wanting to be friends, and ended up almost directly at marriage? We both went silent for a second, then burst out laughing at the same time. I heard a rustling noise from his end, followed by wind through the phone, like he'd stepped onto a balcony. I didn't say anything, just quietly held the phone and listened. Felix's voice was clean and gentle, carried softly into my heart by the light spring breeze. Lucy, I know this isn't entirely fair, but as it stands, you're going to become my wife soon. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, then said slowly, of course, I'm not trying to pressure you. I mean, since we're getting married, would you give me a chance to prove that marrying me isn't a mistake? I listened quietly as Felix's words faded into my ear. My heart, which had been racing since I realized I liked him, surprisingly began to calm down. Holding the phone, I turned to look out the window. I caught a faint reflection of myself in the glass, and was surprised to see a happiness there I'd never noticed before. Felix didn't rush me. He stayed quiet, only his gentle breathing assuring me of his presence. I don't know how much time passed before I lightly touched my upturned lips. With the air full of warmth, I heard my own voice, soft and joyful. I said yes. The next day was my birthday party, with lots of guests. Becky and I share the same birthday, but because of my family's status, no one paid attention to her party. Seeing this, Felix added fuel to the fire. He casually mentioned to the Booths how influential our family is, and suggested using the shared birthdays to form connections with us. Wendy and her husband are known for doing anything for money. They once sold me off to a 50-year-old man for cash, so they wouldn't miss any chance to climb up through Becky's birthday. So naturally, they attended my party, showing the astonished expressions I imagined when our family went up to give a speech. My parents first explained why they stayed low-key over the years, then announced my upcoming marriage to Felix. The internet exploded when the son of the wealthiest family was revealed to be marrying the daughter of a rich, secluded family. Felix had already set up media and live streams at the event, so the news hit the internet in no time. Using this moment, I elegantly walked over to Becky's family, smiling warmly. "I've cleared up the rumors you spread about me. Now, shouldn't we discuss the next part of this?" Becky was in shock, pointing at me, her face twisted, yelling, "Impossible! How can you be so rich? This can't be real." I rolled my eyes, a bit speechless, since my parents just explained everything on stage. Her refusal to accept the truth had her veering towards a breakdown. "If you're so unwilling to believe the facts, let me repeat it. My parents, who are also your foster parents, are indeed very wealthy, and they plan to tell you the truth shortly, before you ran back to the Booths." I looked at her coldly, a mocking smile lingering on my lips. "But thanks to your narrow sight, I could tell right after getting back that my parents aren't ordinary. It's funny you couldn't see it after living with them so long. Becky, this is karma. While you smugly look down on others, you've thrown away your best opportunity." I glanced coldly at my foster parents, sarcastically adding, "Parents who trade their daughter for riches suit you. It seems you two share the same blood, equally disgusting." "Lucy, what do you mean by this?" My foster dad sternly questioned me. "Exactly. Lucy, we raised you all these years, and not only do you show no gratitude, but you also insult us like this." Wendy pointed her sharp nails at me, trying to sway public opinion in front of all the cameras. I let out a soft laugh, facing her accusations directly, meeting her gaze without hesitation. "Raised me? How come you didn't talk about love when you tried to marry me off to a man in his 50s, just to land a business deal?" My adoptive parents' expressions changed. I decisively played a recording of a call with Wendy for everyone to hear. Wendy's condescending tone and Becky's arrogance were broadcasted clearly for everyone. Once the recording ended, the faces of my parents and brothers darkened completely. Jason, with his fiery temper, was already upset from hearing I was nearly trafficked away by the Booths. He immediately threw out evidence he had found. Seeing the scattered documents on the ground, the Booths were first stunned, then their faces drastically changed. In front of everyone and the streaming cameras, Jason exposed the Booths' illegal activities over the years one by one. Initially, Wendy and her husband tried to defend themselves. But as Jason revealed more evidence, they could only lower their heads in defeat. Felix had already contacted the police, who were waiting outside. Once the Booths' crimes were exposed and they couldn't fight back, the police swiftly arrested them. Becky looked in disbelief as her parents were cuffed by the police. She seemed unable to process how things turned out this way. Standing next to her, I glanced at her with a cold and indifferent eye. With Becky, I chose not to have her arrested. For someone like her who just started living a luxurious life, to lose it all and go back to having no money to spend, it was a harsh reality. No, it was even worse than that. Now, she had no family to rely on in this world. No one would foot her bills anymore. Every meal she ate from here on out, she'd have to earn herself. For Becky, this was likely more painful than anything else. I couldn't help but smile, feeling not an ounce of sympathy. No, Felix is supposed to be my fiance. I was the one promised to him as a child. "Lucy, give me back my fiance." Becky suddenly screamed and lunged at me before I could react. I instinctively frowned, but was pulled into the secure embrace of a set of arms around my waist. Felix pushed Becky away, looking at her coldly. "The engagement was with the Smith's daughter, not an imposter like you." He then turned, his gaze fixed pointedly at the nearby security, saying coldly, "This young lady has lost her mind. Please escort her to the hospital." "Yes, sir." With Felix's directive, Security quickly surrounded Becky, ignoring her screams as they removed her. Once the Booth's family was out of sight, calm returned to the scene. Thanks to the miracles of modern live streaming, the truth of the matter was laid bare. Public opinion online had completely flipped. With some guidance from Felix, I was completely lifted out of the storm's eye. I finally felt like I could breathe easy, and before I knew it, Felix was holding my hand. Glancing up instinctively, I met his warm, gentle eyes. They were filled with unabashed affection and love, making our family members smile knowingly and politely step away. In the corner, it was just me and Felix left. Thinking back over the recent events, I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. Felix raised an eyebrow, squeezing my hand a little tighter. Happy? Yeah, very happy. I nodded without hesitation, my eyes smiling at him. But it's not just because Becky and the rest got what was coming to them. It's because my future suddenly seems so promising. Felix, understanding, smiled knowingly. He gently kissed the back of my hand and said warmly, "Your future looks bright indeed, and I'll always be there with you." I playfully winked at him, then grinned mischievously. "Okay, after we get married, I'll count on you to pursue me diligently. A marriage is precious, but love? Even more so. In the adult world, the answer is, I want it all." The end.